Eric was a software engineer with a really great idea for an app, and he had a dream to launch this amazing app that eventually gets millions of users, where he becomes the next big tech guru in Silicon Valley. Let's take a look at how Eric spent the last couple of weeks. He wanted to improve his concentration so he could write better code for his app, but he notices that his house is a mess and decides to spend some time getting it cleaned up first. And he has so many different tech gadgets and trinkets without a great place to organize them, so he decides to get some shelves to put everything on. But he can't find any shelves that perfectly fit in his office. So he takes measurements, goes to Home Depot, buys wood and screws, and watches some YouTube videos on how to build his own shelves so he can neatly organize everything in his house. Eric's also got some friends who make pretty good money on YouTube, and he thinks that this could be another good income stream, so he spends a few hours each day creating YouTube videos teaching people how to code online. And then he spends about an hour every Monday and Thursday tutoring his nephew because he promised his brother he would, and he spent all of Sunday afternoon at a monthly family barbecue. Weeks go by like this, and Eric feels stressed out because he's not seeing a lot of progress being made on his app. So to try to make better progress, he just starts pounding energy drinks. He stops spending time at the gym or seeing his friends, and he starts sleeping just 5 hours a night, which does actually let him spend more hours working on his project. But the deeper he gets into it, the more he starts realizing all the flaws with this idea and reasons for why it wouldn't be successful. But he's already spent so much time on it that he feels like he has to keep going and see it through. And then finally, after a year of working on it, he finally has a draft of his app ready, but he thinks it would be way more successful if it just had a few more features, so he holds off on launching it so he can make it perfect before the big launch. According to Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism, Eric's strategy for success is a failing one. And in some way or another, most people, even the really smart ones, fall into some of the same traps that Eric fell into and without even realizing it. The book recommends that by adopting the way of the essentialist, you can actually work way less than you probably are right now and still be way more likely to succeed. I'll take you through 7 of the most important takeaways from the book, and then at the end, we'll revisit Eric and take a look at what his strategy should have looked like as a true essentialist. Now, without further ado, let's dive in. Principle number 1, become extremely clear about your mission and priorities. This is the very first step to becoming an essentialist. None of the other principles in this book are going to work unless you first master this one. By becoming crystal clear on your mission, it lets you make priorities, which a lot of people actually don't know how to do. If you ask someone about their priorities, they'll start listing off a whole laundry list of things. But the very definition of a priority is when you have 2 things that come in conflict where you can only pick one. Which one are you picking? Greg tells the story of 2 companies. One of them had the following mission statement: "We aim to be the leader in all our markets for the good of customers and shareholders." Does this sound similar to the mission statement of whatever company you work at? So many organizations have absurdly vague mission statements like these. Like, what the fuck does that statement even mean? It's not saying anything, just a bunch of word spaghetti. A different company in the book instead had the following mission statement: "We believe that our first responsibility is to doctors, nurses, and patients, to mothers, fathers, and everyone else who uses our product and services, to meet their needs. Everything we do must be of the highest quality." This was the mission statement of pharmaceutical company Johnson & Johnson, and it was actually used as a North Star to guide the company in making difficult decisions. In 1982, 7 people died after taking Tylenol, a drug made by Johnson & Johnson. It was eventually discovered that those pills were poisoned with cyanide. So what did Johnson & Johnson do? They immediately withdrew every single Tylenol bottle from every store it was distributed to. So it was not an easy pill to swallow, pun intended, because the move cost the company's shareholders $100 million. But it was an easy decision to make because the company's mission statement and priorities were clear. Customers first, shareholders last. The whole point of making priorities isn't to help you make easy decisions, because if the decision was easy to make, you wouldn't need defined priorities in the first place. Clearly defined priorities are there precisely to help you make the hard decisions. In your own life, you probably have your own dreams and goals and stuff you want to accomplish, but you probably also have a bunch of other, less important stuff chip away at your time every day. The first step in correcting this is becoming extremely clear about what your mission and priorities are. Principle 2. Being busy does not equal being productive. This is an extremely common mind trap that a lot of smart people in particular fall into, and it typically goes something like this. Thinking about starting a big, important project gives you a lot of anxiety, like studying for your final exams or doing that big project at work. But you also don't want to feel unproductive by watching TV or something. So what you might do is spend some time on tasks that seem productive, but actually aren't getting you any closer to your goals at all, like cleaning up your email inbox or pulling the weeds out of your lawn or reorganizing your closet. This lets your brain feel like you're spending your time on worthwhile things, but it's a trap because in reality, you're not getting any closer to the important goals in your life. Now, I don't mean you should never do things like reorganize your closet or pull weeds, but you should be extremely careful to limit how much time you spend on shallow tasks like that to no more than an hour a day, and only after you've made a real progress toward your actual goals. Otherwise, stuff like that is just going to fill up the majority of your day, and a year will go by and you'll be in the same place, making the exact same New Year's resolution that you made last year, since you won't be any closer to your goals. Principle 3. Ignore good opportunities so you can go 100% all in on the great opportunities. There's literally over 1,000 different ways to make a lot of money, and at least 100 of those are great ways to make a lot of money. But if you try to do all of them, you're going to end up not making any money. Imagine you broke your knee and you needed a doctor to perform a complex, delicate surgery to fix it. So you meet with 2 doctors. One of them has made an entire specialty focusing on complex knee repair and has performed over 100 surgeries identical to yours in the last year. The other doctor is not only more of a generalist, focusing on lots of different types of surgeries, but also did a career change a few years back where he actually used to be an accountant and still spends half his time running a tax preparation business on the side. Which doctor would you rather have performing your surgery? Probably the one who has gone all in on becoming an excellent, specialized knee surgeon. Maybe this isn't the most realistic example, but you get the point. If you want to be truly great at something, you have to say no to being good at a bunch of different things. Warren Buffett, one of the world's most successful investors and one of the richest people in the world, owes 90% of his entire fortune to just 10 investments. Some ignorant people like to rag on Buffett for missing amazing investment opportunities like Tesla and Amazon in the mid-2010s, but Buffett doesn't care. Again, there's hundreds of stocks that could have made him extremely rich, but it doesn't matter because not only is it impossible to accurately predict them all, it's also unnecessary and would just be a huge waste of time and energy because he can instead just focus on the few opportunities that he's extremely confident in and go all in on those. The book suggests a very quick and easy test you can use to decide whether you should spend your time on a particular opportunity. You should ask yourself, is this opportunity a hell yes? If it's not an absolute, energetic, extremely excited hell yes, then it should be a clear no. Find the few opportunities that are hell yeses and focus all your attention on those. Principle 4. Learn to say no a lot more frequently than you say yes. This is another extremely common trap that people fall into. So many of us are just massive people pleasers, especially when it comes to our family or friends or people we work with. But the book says, basically, to fuck politeness and start making a good habit out of telling people no. Other people are always going to take as much time away from you as you allow them. A technique you can use to help you here is this. Imagine people aren't asking you for your time, but for your 16-year-old son's time. And your son is already working 60 hours a week at 2 different jobs. You probably wouldn't feel as bad telling people in 90% of those cases, no, sorry, my son just doesn't have time for that right now, right? Well, whatever your mission or goal or dream is, you need to treat that like it's your overworked 16-year-old son living in a world where child labor laws don't exist, and stop peddling him around town for everyone else's benefit. And even though I'm a firm believer that no is a complete sentence, you also don't have to be a dick about it if you don't want to. So instead of committing the time and energy that you don't have by saying yes, you can follow up your polite yet firm no with a proposal for an alternative that could still help out the friend or family member who's asking you for help. So for example, if they ask you if you can drive them somewhere, you can just say, no, sorry, I don't have time for that right now, but here's the keys to my car. You're welcome to take it. Or if your boss asks you to take on more work at your day job, you can say, absolutely, I'd love to help out with this. Currently, my day is already filled up with tasks X, Y, and Z. Which one of those should I deprioritize to make a room for this new task? Principle 5. Cut your losses before they drag you down further. Let's do a short quiz. Let's say you spent $100 on tickets to go skiing for a weekend in Michigan in a couple months. Then a few weeks later, you buy tickets to go skiing in Colorado for $50, and you totally forgot that those tickets fall on the same weekend as your Michigan ski trip. And even though your Michigan tickets cost $100, you think you'd actually have way more fun skiing in Colorado. Most people are literally hardwired to still choose going to Michigan that weekend because they don't like the feeling of wasting that more expensive ticket. But in reality, this would be irrational because the money on the tickets is already spent and non-refundable, and now you'll be spending that weekend having less fun than you would somewhere else. This is called a sunk cost fallacy, and there's a ton of studies that prove how impactful this is. It's the same reason why people overeat at buffets until they can't breathe, or why people who already lost a ton of money at the casino throw even more money at it to try and recoup their losses. The book argues that you have to consciously fight back against this emotional tendency. Only when you admit and accept a failure that's already happened can you begin the path to success. Non-essentialists think, I've already thrown so much time and money at this, I have to keep going so that it wasn't all for nothing. While essentialists have the mindset of, if I cut my losses right now, what could I accomplish with the remaining time and money that I'd be saving? Principle 6. Rest and recovery is not optional, it's essential. Sleep is the most important thing you can do for your success. Your number one priority every single day should be to get a full night of sleep. The dickheads at your job bragging about how they only suffer 5 hours a night like it's some badge of honor are ignorant and digging themselves an early grave. I spent a decade working in banking and consulting, and I'm telling you there's no shortage of these idiots. Remember our second principle that being busy does not equal being productive. Imagine that what's separating you from your goals and dreams is a maze. When you're working on the right things, you're taking the most efficient path through that maze. When you're working on the wrong things, you end up wasting time going down the wrong paths in that maze. The main factor that's going to determine whether you're spending time on the right things or the wrong things is your ideas, what you mentally decide to spend your time on. And if you want to have good ideas, you have to be well rested, you have to be healthy, and you have to spend at least some time doing things that are fun and enjoyable so that your mind can relax. That's why there's so many cases of people coming up with those eureka moment ideas randomly in the shower or while taking a walk with their dog. Your subconscious mind that generates creative ideas works its best in states of joy and relaxation. Principle 7. Iterate. Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Perfectionism is not a good thing. There's almost nothing on this planet that's worth doing 100% perfectly. Now, I'm not saying you should do a bad job or not care about taking pride in your work, but you need to understand that once whatever task you're working on reaches the level of good enough, you're going to see rapidly diminishing returns the more time you spend on it, and you're spending an enormous opportunity cost on the time that you could have spent moving on to the next task. In business, you have the idea of minimum viable product. What is the simplest possible product that will be useful to the intended audience? The book suggests to adopt this approach in everything that you do. Focus on the fastest and simplest path to a realistic complete outcome. Then launch it, get feedback, and iterate further after that. Don't spend years churning on getting every possible tiny detail 100% perfectly right before ever launching anything. This paralysis by overanalysis ends up being the graveyard for the ideas and business ventures of a lot of perfectionists. Let's make Eric an essentialist. Remember Eric from the start of the video? Let's apply all 7 of the principles we learned from this book to turn him into an essentialist and correct what he should have done if he wanted to achieve his goals. The very first thing he should have done is followed Principle 1 and written a clearly defined mission statement for his goals and priorities. Something along the lines of, my goal is to design and launch an app that, within the next 12 months, gets 1 million active users. When he realizes that his house being a mess is too much of a distraction for him, he should have applied Principle 2 and made a plan for the fastest possible way to get his house organized. It shouldn't be, how can I make my house as organized as humanly possible? It should be, what is the fastest and simplest level of organization that would be enough so that I'm no longer distracted? He definitely should not have spent time building custom shelves. And by the way, if you're wondering where I got this idea for building custom shelves, it's for myself. I did this. Here's the shelves that I built. And yes, the shelves are nice, but it was a stupid activity and it cost me a month of my time. When Eric gets the idea from his friends to start a YouTube channel to make extra money, he should have applied Principle 3 and realized, yes, this may indeed be a good idea, but if I had to choose between a YouTube channel and launching this app, I would still choose the app. The YouTube channel would take my time away from the app, so I'm going to say no to the YouTube channel idea. When his brother asks him to spend a couple hours a week tutoring his nephew in programming, he should have applied Principle 4 and said, let me think about it and get back to you. and then found other good resources like good textbooks, YouTube channels, or other established tutors that he can recommend instead, while politely declining because he unfortunately just doesn't have the time at the moment. By providing a carefully made list of other helpful resources, it would still show his brother or nephew that he genuinely does care and there should be no bad blood between them. When Eric started realizing fundamental flaws in his app idea, he should have applied Principle 5 and taken some time to do some creative and critical thinking on how to best pivot his idea to something else. Even though he might feel like the last few months of effort would have gone to waste, it's better to just take it as a learning experience instead of wasting even more months on a doomed idea. When he started giving up on sleep, nutrition, exercise, or any form of recreation, he should have realized that he was violating Principle 6. The time he might save by skipping doing all those things will be completely dwarfed by the efficiency, quality, and creative thinking he would lose by putting himself in such an unhealthy state. And when his app finally did reach a state of minimum viable product, he should have applied Principle 7 and at least launched to a small beta testing group to get feedback from actual users that could help generate ideas that he never would have thought of in a silo. Don't be like Eric and start following each of these 7 principles. It definitely won't be easy, but it is essential. All right, really quick, if you like these concepts and you want to refer back to them, I made this really colorful one-page mind map that summarizes all the key points from this video. If you click the link in the description, I'll email it to you completely for free. And if you already subscribed to my newsletter, this mind map should already be sitting in your inbox. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, good luck in your adventure, and I'll see you in the next one.